Afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from today. I'm so excited to be hanging out with some of our friends at Sideways 6 today, but also some amazing panelists, experts in the field of internal communications and employee engagement, which we'll get to meet very, very soon. Before we dive into this wonderful webinar, I wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping to make sure we understand how to use the software you're all joining us here from. Before we do, my name's Greg Stortz. I'm the Director of Engagement here at Interact, and soon I'm going to bring a colleague to the virtual stage as well from the Sideways 6 team, and we'll introduce them as well. Little housekeeping. If you have questions during this entire webinar, you can ask them. We want this to feel as interactive as possible, so please don't be shy. And also, the chat is there. So on the right-hand side of your screen, the Q&A tab or the chat tab is yours to add anything you like. So tell us where you're dialing in from, and let's get that chat going. If you are having any issues from a technical perspective, which we don't think you should be, but usually refreshing your browser is all you need to do to bring it back to life, and you should be set. And of course, we are recording today's webinar, so don't worry, you'll get a handy copy of today's webinar along with some goodies after today's show. I just want to tell you a little bit about Interact. So I'm a little biased, work for one of the coolest brands on the planet. And I know that we're going to hear from Sideways 6 as well, and they're going to argue that they are as well. But Interact, we're a bunch of very passionate people when it comes to internal communications, employee engagement, and creating these virtual workspaces that a lot of our trusted customers have stood up for their own employees. We are 100% looking after all of the employees across the board. We make sure that everything in their world is connected so that they can do what is important to them, their job, which is in turn, hopefully, something you're very passionate about as well. Now, to bring our friends from Sideways 6 to the stage, I want to allow them to introduce the brand since we've been partnering with them for quite some time now. So Jake, I'll hand it to you to tell us a little bit about Sideways 6.
Thank you, Greg. Hi, everyone. I'm Jake Dibble, Head of Customer Success at Sideways 6. We're Sideways 6, and Greg, I think we may be cooler.
All right.
But we'll let people decide.
Let a poll at the end. Let's do this.
Yeah, I like that. So we're an employee idea management platform, which is incredibly exciting. We exist primarily to bring good ideas to life every day, everywhere, from everyone. So that's our purpose. We predominantly do that to help businesses do three things, which is increase employee engagement, create shared ownership of change, which is critical at this time, and generate significant business impact from ideas. And that's primarily done from capturing ideas where employees are. So for Interact customers, that's likely to be within an intranet. But for our customers, that's predominantly in Microsoft Teams. So an embedded approach to collecting ideas, allowing transparency in the process of submitting and evaluating those ideas, and ultimately using a powerful backend to bring the best ideas to life to create the most impact. But very excited to riff with you today. Looking forward to being joined by our amazing panelists and looking forward to sort of understanding a bit more about listening with purpose.
Amazing. Great to have you, Jake. Thanks for joining us. And Interact and Sideways 6 have now joined forces in partnership, and we are now looking at the entire spectrum of employee engagement and looking from the world of ideas to the world of checking in with employees to internal communication. So a huge spectrum with the power of both coming together. So thanks for being here. So why, as internal communicators or employee engagement, why should we care about active listening? Now, the reality of employee engagement, I mean, we know that internal communications, intranets, and ideas, all of these things are part of listening strategies. Now, listening strategies are super important, but I know that we are all challenged day in and day out. Not everybody in every organization has someone dedicated to this. But what's interesting about it is that 74% of employees say that they feel more effective and engaged when they feel heard at work. Now, interestingly enough, is if we're not paying attention to this and growing this space and worrying about what our employees have to say to us, we are missing on a huge opportunity to improve that employee engagement field for employees across your entire organization. On the same token, 88% of organizations feel that when employees feel heard, and they're more likely to feel engaged, which in turn works in more productivity, more output, happier employees doing happier things for customers. The entire spectrum changes when we have employees who feel good and feel heard. But what's interesting about that is that only 3 in 10 employees in 2023 believe that their opinion counts at work. Now that's tough to hear, especially for me as an engagement director of engagement here at Interact, is that, how do we change this? What can we do to make sure that more employees are feeling heard, improve the employee experience within the organization, but, also allow for their ideas and their needs and their wants to flourish within an organization, to grow that workplace into something that they all want to take part of day in and day out. So there's a lot to be done. And that's why we're excited to bring a panel together to talk about how do we make this come to life? How do we bring the employee experience to the forefront through active listening? And we need to start empowering our employees to start talking to us, sharing those ideas, sharing what it is that they need to improve their workplace, to make it easier for the customers that they're dealing with on a day in and day out basis. And a lot of that can be done through, there's multiple tools out there, multiple items that can be part of a listening strategy. And that's why we've piled together an entire panel to speak with us today to talk about what's happening in their organization, and what they've done within their organization to empower their own employees, but also produce positive change in many different ways. So I would love to take the role of introducing this wonderful, wonderful panel, but I'm not. I'm going to allow Veronica to introduce yourself, and we'll pass it over to Stefan, Laura, and Suzanne to do theirs as well. So Veronica, thank you for joining us, and I'll hand it to you to say hello.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, and I don't know what day it is if you're watching on the replay, but I'm looking forward to talking to you guys today about listening. I have been working in the aviation space for about 20 years, and I kind of focus on change and transformation. So now currently leading change at Vueling, which is a low-cost carrier based out in Barcelona.
Amazing. Great. Stefan, can I pass it to you to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Stefan Lee. I've been working in the media space for about 7-8 years now. I'm currently with BAFTA, but I've just recently left Warner Brothers Discovery, VP of Portfolio Strategy and Innovation for the EMEA region. And so we had a lot of chances to work on employee engagement projects through that role. And I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Stefan. Thanks for joining us. Suzanne, I'll hand it to you.
Okay. Hello, I'm Suzanne Beeman. I've been with Canon Solutions America and Canon USA for over 27 years, and primarily in the learning and engagement arena. And I support the managed services division, where 75% of the staff is physically located at our client location. And I'm sorry, Jake, but Greg gets all my cool points as an Interact and Impulse customer. So I just want to put that out there.
And we love it. Don't worry. Thanks for joining us, Suzanne. And Laura Jones, last but not least, of course.
Hi. My name's Laura Jones. I'm the digital colleague experience lead at the Corp Bank. For the non-UK people, the Cooperative Bank's a small SME retail bank. We've got an ethical policy, so we're a customer-led ethical policy. So we do things primarily with our values and ethics in mind. I've been at the bank for about 10 years in various comms and internet roles, and most recently been looking after our sort of wider colleague experience in that listening strategy space.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us. So we have a broad spectrum of many different skills and expertise and lengths with the organization. So this is going to be a very, very great conversation. So I'm glad you're all here joining with us. So I want to start to talk, we'll kick this off. I want to learn a little bit about your listening strategies and what this means for each individual organization. So if each of you could just kick off for me, maybe Veronica, I'm sorry. I'll kick it off with you. If you could tell us a little bit about what's it like with your listening strategy within your organization, what does it look like?
So we essentially had post-COVID a real need to change as a business. I'm sure all of you understand the impact on aviation was quite acute based on the changes that went around a couple of years ago. So as a business, we had decided we needed to transform, and a lot of our leadership team had been involved quite intimately in deciding what that looked and felt like. But we recognized as a transformation function that transformations generally don't succeed unless they empower and meet the needs of all the people within an organization. And particularly at an airline, we have a lot of people that aren't in the head office. So we have people out on the ramp, we have people on the planes, we have people at the airport. So we had to come up with a strategy really to be able to take the principles of our mission and vision and our values out to the people that kind of are dealing with our passengers and working closest to our business. So the idea of the Employee Ideas Programme, which we call internally Make It Better, it was all about how do we link those frontline staff members, get their feedback into our wider transformation, because ultimately they're the closest to the problems and also the closest to potentially opportunities. So we wanted to make sure those people had a way to feed in. So that is kind of how our program was kind of born, and the kind of the main rationale for it really. And as you said at the start, the outcomes of that are in lots of different ways. You know, we have higher engagement because we have the program, but we also have access to opportunities that, you know, help us support our balanced scorecard in terms of company KPIs as well, that we wouldn't maybe have met without the program.
Of course, that's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Veronica. Laura, maybe you can dive in for what it's like at the cooperative bank from a listening strategy point of view.
Yeah, sure. So I suppose in a similar sort of way, we changed a lot of things post-pandemic. We moved into a primarily home workers scenario too. Apart from our branch network colleagues, the vast majority of people work some, if not all, of their time at home. And so we had to move to do things in a much more digital way. So I suppose there's a few layers and structures to it. So primarily we use the pulse survey tool within Interact to gather regular feedback on from an engagement perspective, and colleagues as part of that have the opportunity on a bi-monthly basis to provide free text feedback to our exec team. But that's really about everything and anything. There's more structured, I suppose, strategies that sit within that, whether it's about transformation and change or improvements to process and policy and procedure. So using the forum function within Interact, we have an efficiency forum, so people can suggest and make ideas, again, about anything and everything, whether it's customer or colleague process. But it's really that open forum for anybody, no matter what your role at the bank, you can make a suggestion. And we've made some quite big changes to some of our processes and procedures that have improved customer journeys as a result. Maybe things that we wouldn't have known without colleagues who do this stuff day in, day out, and speak to customers day in, day out. We wouldn't necessarily have known, and have made some real cost savings and efficiencies as part of that. And then I suppose there's the more verbal structured stance of whether it's exec doing regular Q&As or like skip level meetings, so meeting with the directs to get to sort of gather feedback, have that sort of open and honest culture. That, I suppose, is at the heart of a lot of the culture at the bank, is about trying to be open and honest and giving everybody a platform to do that in, no matter who they are. So yeah, it's ever developing. We're changing it all the time and trying to make it even better. But at the core is a real belief that we want to hear colleagues' thoughts, and we're lucky in that we've got an exec team that really value that and are genuinely engaged in wanting to hear what people think.
I love that. And I actually think the fact that you're saying your strategy is ever changing makes it already a successful strategy. You should change. We're an evolving space, right? Your workplace is changing, the environment is changing, so should your strategy. I love that. Thank you.
I love the transparency piece as well, Laura. The sort of the need to be more open and transparent as an organization. I think recognizing that and leveraging your employees to do that is really powerful.
Wonderful. Stefan, maybe I'll jump to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So employee listening at Warner Brothers Discovery. Well, Warner Brothers Discovery is a very large global media powerhouse. We span film, television, gaming. So if you watched Barbie, if you've watched The Last of Us, if you have played Hogwarts Legacy, all of that has touched some part of the Warner Brothers Discovery portfolio. So because of that, we just have employees all over the globe in different various functional teams. And we wanted to harness, for as much as creative output that we produce, we wanted to harness the creative power of the employees that were working within the walls. And so that led to a decision to grow an internal employee innovation program that would literally ask the employees how we can make the business better, how we can innovate on ourselves, how we can put out more ideas into the world. And so that innovation program was called Spark Innovation. We started that in 2017, and we've really grown that every year with the help of programs like Sideways 6 to really get everybody to pitch in their crazy ideas, but we would actually collect them, listen to them, and enact the ones that we thought had the most potential.
Love this, love this. And you know what, I think we've been talking about listening strategies as an Interact, collective for a while. And I think one of the biggest misrepresented facets of a listening strategy is the ideation section of it. So I love that you're saying that. And I think there's some real gold in the fact that you're creating two-way communication, allowing employees to feedback in a way, in a full transparent way to shine light onto what Laura was saying is, it's wonderful. This is great. Thanks, Stefan. That's amazing. And Suzanne, you're at Canon using Pulse from Interact in a very unique way to manage a space there. But what's listening strategies like there for you at Canon? I know you're it's a broader spectrum of things, but
yeah, we're a little different because we use Interact and Pulse just for one specific division. Sure. It's kind of a division that started kind of grassroots, and it's kind of grown over the years, and where we have our staff at our client locations. So in the spirit of information security, you have to keep Canon separate from our clients' networks, and that has always made sharing communication a bit difficult. And in the past, it was, old-fashioned kind of email. And as technology kind of grew, fortunately before COVID, we decided that we needed to do something a little bit better than what we've been doing. And in 2019, we were able to launch Interact for this particular group, which definitely prepared us for the positive as we hit the pandemic. But we also use Pulse on an annual basis because this particular group, since they're at a client location and involved and immersed in the client culture, it's very important that they feel that they're part of Canon. And being able to have Interact and doing the Pulse survey, allowing them to have a voice, and not just, and again, it's not just getting the information, but responding to them and letting them know, yes, we've received this information. Thank you very much. For the ones that we can act on it, we give them the kudos that they deserve. The ones that we can't, we thank them for the information and give them a reason why we can't. So it just makes them, just like any relationship, communication is important. Feeling valued is important. So it doesn't matter if it's a client-vendor relationship, a personal relationship, or a company-employee relationship. Communication and feeling valued is always important.
Couldn't agree more. No, I love that. Absolutely. I'm very curious, and I'm sure everyone who's listening right now is curious as well. If you're trying to develop a listening strategy within your organization, did it come from this group of panelists right now? Was it you that stood it up? And if it was, or if it wasn't, who was it? And what did it take to get it up and running? So, was it an uphill battle, or was it quite easy because we found gaps and we're able to just shine light on, we need this? I'll let anybody take the floor for this one.
I'll start because my answer will be short.
Sure.
My previous leadership saw the gap, saw that we needed to get, reach this group, and it also propel us. Canon's always constantly morphing. Nothing ever stays the same. And so, as technology changes, we needed to bring technology. So fortunately for me, leadership brought it, and I asked to get my fingers in it. And so my colleagues and I got our fingers in it, and we were able to have the flexibility to run with it.
Amazing. So that seems pretty seamless and easy. I love this.
Yes.
I wish this for everyone. I really do.
Yes, me too.
I'll take the follow on that.
Yes.
We did it the exact opposite way. Ground up, rather than top down. But
course.
part of my team had internal communications as a remit and had a superstar colleague, Irene, who kind of spearheaded this drive to launch the Spark Innovation Program. So we did see gaps. We actually looked at the different business units that we were working with, primarily across Europe, because that was our focus, and saw naturally the different teams in the different countries were starting on their own ideas campaigns individually. And so we basically linked up everybody and tried to go in with a larger program that could span the entire European region. So we were able to start slowly, grow the pilots into a regional program. And then last year, we were able to take it global for the first time. So it was really a bottom-up movement. But along the way, we got key executive support and sponsorship, which is absolutely critical.
That's fantastic. And was it a tough sell? Like when getting that sponsorship, was it difficult, or did it just fall in place? Like people are just like, oh yeah, I get this. This is needed.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have the proof of concept. So our thing was always start small with a pilot and say, hey, this group of 50, this group of 100, they're doing really interesting things. And then it's just take it to the next level. You grow from one country to a region to the whole company. So having the test case proven over and over again really did help.
Planting the little seed and let it kind of flourish from there.
Yes.
One of the triggers that we see at the moment, and one of the trends that we see from quite a lot of the conversations that we're having, is that stat that you showed at the beginning, Greg, around 3 in 10 feel unengaged. This time of year, employee engagement surveys coming out, and there are lots of workforces that are disengaged, and that is sparking leadership into conversations where they start to take action and realize that they need to speak to and listen to employees. And so that's one of the things that we're seeing at a more macro trend level. But the work that Stephen and Veronica have done in terms of spearheading their listening campaigns have been phenomenal.
I guess I can follow on from that position. So as you mentioned, we, not through Interact, but through a different, I guess, rival software, have a company heartbeat type engagement strategy. And so in our OHI metrics, there's numbers of different drivers of overall happiness and company health. And the position for Vueling was that some of the indicators of general company health, especially after the pandemic and what airline people went through, we could see that there was a big gap in exactly the metric that you mentioned there, Jake, which is people feeling they had a place to put their ideas and a place to share their innovation. It was such a big traumatic experience that people wanted to feel part of the solution and how to resolve that. So from our leadership perspective, it was definitely in response to what our people were telling us, in fact, that we then decided that we needed to launch this program. And so to your question around who set it up, it was actually the reason why I joined Vueling. And it was the first thing that I launched when I arrived at Vueling about a year ago, having done similar programs in different places. So that was essentially my MVP as to whether I'd be suitable in this company, was to get the ideas program up and running, which might explain, Jake, why it's gone so quickly and so fast, because my motivation of my career is on the line behind the scenes.
And so well.
I should say that, yes. So the question around leadership and the buy-in, there's different ways to motivate different people. Some people like the facts, the numbers. The finance guy wanted to know how much I could bring in and what I was going to save. The people managers needed to know that it was going to help their people be happy. So we identified those different stakeholders as you would with any change management approach, and understood the things that would make them feel comfortable and supported and essentially win their support to deliver the program. We operate at a number of levels in the business, so it's not just a case of getting the leadership, senior leaders involved. We have coaches across the business, we have experts within the fields that we support, and we also have a team of actually employee ambassadors that are part of making sure that the listening program is adopted as well. So having the different layers of engagement help you get something like this up and running.
Amazing. Okay, that's great. And Laura, anything to add there?
So I suppose ours was different, but I suppose similar in pockets to what other people have said. I suppose that I kind of see our listening strategies in two sections. So there's the ideation, creating improvements and making change, and the sort of more general engagement and a listening to what colleagues think and feel and kind of responding to that sort of stuff. The ideas stuff has evolved and has always been there to some extent, and we've had pockets of the organisation that have done it really well, some that have tried and it's failed. They've not really had the mechanisms behind to really sift through and then act on the feedback that they've been provided with. So colleagues kind of got to a point where they felt like, what's the point in me contributing? You're not going to do anything with it anyway. So when we launched our intranet in 2019, we created a new forum that pulled all of those listening strategies together into one place. And for various different reasons, it kind of didn't work as we went into the pandemic, and people got distracted with trying to keep everything running and coping with their own stresses at life of trying to work from home and the kids and the dogs and everything else annoying you. So we recently relaunched that earlier on this year with a real structure behind it from a team that are committed to reviewing and responding to people's feedback. And because it's on a forum, it's all public, so everybody sees every idea that comes through as it's being submitted, and other colleagues can go, yeah, that's great, I really like that. I mean, you kind of reduces that duplication as well, which is really nice. That's working really well. It's only been in place since sort of April time, but we have made some quite significant changes to some of our processes that were ludicrous, that we didn't really realise were working in the way that they were until a colleague had phrased it the way that they did. The listening stuff has changed because of the pandemic. So what we found coming out of it and trying to return to the office was that people had, as they did everywhere, different levels of comfort towards that change in their ways of working. Some people were quite happy to work from home and never come back to the office ever again. Others were desperate for it, and others were still quite fearful of getting back into that routine and being around other people again. So our exec team were quite keen that they wanted to try and find out what people were feeling, do a bit of a ways of working survey, but we didn't have a mechanism in place. So prior to that, we'd done an annual engagement survey that we'd paid a third party to provide. And with that, we kind of got some benchmarking and stuff. But because of that, it was very expensive. So as we came out of COVID in a very cost conscious sort of every penny counts more so than it ever did before environment, we ran our first ways of working survey just using the forms tool within the intranet. But clearly that's not totally anonymous. And as much as I will be ethical about it and not provide names next to people's comments, you can never guarantee, I suppose, from a colleague perspective, that they put in their trust in me and my team to follow that through. So we kind of got semi-honest feedback, I'd say. Some people don't care and I'll tell you what they think anyway, but I think the vast majority of people did mute it slightly. So when it comes to Pulse coming out from Interact, I pitched 4 times before I convinced everybody to do it, which sounds ridiculous for a relatively small cost, but it was really about selling that benefit to the exec team of what we could gain from it. And it's kind of been a victim to its own success in some ways, in that last year when we launched it in February, we ran it monthly. I honestly thought people would get fed up, and after a few months, the numbers of free text comments would drop. Maybe people would still fill in the questions because there was only 2 or 3 of them, but they'd get fed up with the feedback, and they absolutely did not. So then moving into this year, I've reduced it to bi-monthly, purely from a resource and capability perspective. We haven't got the time to turn around the action off the back of it, to do it in a sort of 2-week period, to really enact some meaningful change. So yes, we've reduced it down this year, and we'll probably go one step further to quarterly next year. The volume has increased, not decreased, and the quality of feedback that we get through the Pulse surveys is really high. So we do need a little bit more time to do something with it, really. Then you can see some tangible change from one Pulse to the next.
But applause to you at the Cooperative Bank. I mean, like, survey fatigue, I know this gets thrown around as a term, like, it's real. It's real. But it's attributed to the fact that people get sick of no action happening.
Yeah.
So it's not that we're sad about surveys. No one's sad about surveys. We love to give opinions. We all have them. It's just when we know nothing's going to happen, we think it's just.
Yeah, absolutely. The feedback that I get on the survey is, can you not ask some different questions? Like they still want to answer the questions, but they want to answer something different.
Right.
Right. But then I can't track it, so it needs to be consistent so that I can see the trend in the EMPS goes up and down from one to the next, and I can track something's happened. Has that because of what's in the feedback? Can we see where it's like peaks and troughs? So, yeah. But yeah, absolutely feel valued. I think so anyway. I hope so.
It's amazing. So this is a great segue into the world of talking about tools and technology. So I think from each of our panelists, we probably can all guess what you're using so far. I know we haven't really introduced which of you were fully Sideways 6 and which ones are fully Interact, but and maybe in the future we'll see some crossover in those worlds. But I want to talk about technology and tools that are available to you that you may be using. And these don't have to also be things that are software based. I'm interested in your strategies, what they look like from a listening standpoint, from tools, technologies, but also things that you do that may not be so obvious that help in with employee listening. Who wants to take the reins on that one?
I can jump in there.
Yes.
So we actually had a first step prior to the Spark Innovation program that we launched, which was actually just connecting up the employees in general. So I think that it was fundamental for the beginning of a listening strategy, was to shift from what we used to have was a one-way old school intranet portal, one-way communications. And we flipped that and adopted Workplace, which is by Meta, as a two-way communication platform. And so that was the groundwork that we laid to have everybody be able to just see what the employees were doing across the company. Right. It was really revolutionary. People were very engaged with it. And off the top of that, we were able to layer in a Spark innovation piece to that using that technology. So on the Workplace platform, we were able to collect a bunch of ideas for whatever innovation program we had going on at the time. And then the back end work was done through Sideways 6. So I'm sorry, but I have to be Team Sideways 6 here.
Do it. It's all good. It's great.
And I guess as another Sideways 6 user, I think I'll follow on from that one. We have, and like most companies, digital facing teams. We have people on site, off site, particularly the cabin crew for their recurrency training have to be in the office doing all of their learning. So we have traditional methodologies for communication, and obviously through that process there's two-way conversations there, so intranet site opportunities for people to learn more about different departments through those communications. And then we have some additional techniques, so we have podcasts and lots of other things that we do to share stories and shine a light on the different parts of the departments. We've also worked really hard on our overall kind of togetherness strategy. And this comes in when you have such disparate workforces that have completely different jobs, but both have to do their jobs well for the product to succeed. So you have a lot of office-based staff doing analytics and safety stuff and things that help support the back end of an airline. And then you have obviously the pilots that fly the plane, you have the cabin crew on board. So you can develop a very much them and us type environment because the pressures of your day-to-day are completely different. And I appreciate I couldn't do another one of our colleagues' jobs. So even before we moved into the employee engagement space and the idea generation space, we had already started to try and bring those groups together through the communities. So similar to sort of Workplace and creating that sharing and essentially getting people to build that informal network. And then the idea of launching the Ideas program, and we use Sideways 6 connected to Teams to do that. It means that ideas come in from everywhere. And as Laura was saying, that transparency of seeing all the ideas, seeing the responses mean that our people obviously feel heard. So having the technology, it really accelerates our ability to get the ideas in, see what's popular, and ultimately deliver outcomes off the back of it, which obviously helps to deliver. So I always describe Sideways 6 as my 13th team member. It's on the side doing all the hard work for me on the background.
Love it. So Jake, maybe just to make sure we clear the air and talk about Sideways 6 one more time. I know almost everyone on this call will know what an intranet is, and pulse surveys are probably very much in tune with this. But ideation software, in a nutshell, what is Sideways 6 doing in this grand scheme of things?
Great question. So we're of the opinion that in order for ideation to happen and be captured, and the volume of ideas and the best ideas to then be captured from your workforce, you have to be asking them where your employees are. Predominantly, obviously, accelerated hugely through the pandemic, but so many global workforces now are on things like Microsoft Teams, workplace that Stefan mentioned, but predominantly Microsoft Teams across our customer base, or interacting in intranets, for example. If you can be present where your employees are, the idea submission process and that capturing process can be so much more straightforward. And we believe that is the initial critical part of success to Employee Ideas program. We have a sort of powerful back end, which then ultimately makes it sure that the best and the most high quality ideas are sped through quickly the evaluation process, but really being present where your employees are on Teams, on ESNs is the foundation for what we do at Sideways 6.
Amazing. So I know, Laura already said about Pulse being able to take the analytics, and we're able to look at a big sum of information and make it easy to understand and read. You're like this for the ideation world. We're just making it easier to consume and manage a mass amount of ideas in a.
Exactly. Consume, manage, evaluate, bring to life. Ultimately, our mission is to bring good ideas to life. So what we want to do is we make sure that the best ideas have got the best chance of being captured, then being enriched. So if you're on Microsoft Teams as well, you can like, comment, engage with those ideas, supply additional evidence, encourage the best ones to be reviewed by leadership. And then you sort of take that idea, you take it through an idea management process, and through Sideways 6 can bring the best ones to life. But the most impact are created by the best ideas, being present where people are, giving them transparency, and then quickly being able to evaluate the success of idea is the key to creating impact in an organization.
Amazing. This is great. Laura, jumping over to you. We know you're using Pulse, we just heard, but is there anything else happening in the cooperative bank to empower the listening strategy, or to inform the listening strategy?
So I suppose we have people and champions, ambassador type roles that kind of help drive that through, and it's probably got different. It's a bit more condensed in some areas than others, depending on how they interact with the intranet or I suppose where they are. So, and as somebody's asked on the chat about getting your frontline colleagues sort of engaged in idea generation and feedback. So I suppose we do it in different ways. So we're really linked into the operational comms guys. So our frontline colleagues have regular huddles where their team leader gets up and usually telling them that a process has been changed and there's something that they need to do differently in their roles. We'll also use that time to give them time to complete the pulse survey when it's open. Right. Or give them the time to submit an idea through the forum, and because it's all an interact and it's where they are, it's where they spend their time, as Jake's just said. It's easy for them to flick across from one thing to another, and they can access both things through the mobile app. So it's there with them when they think of something, when they're with a customer, rather than having to come away and come out into something, log into something else. It's contained. The be efficient is what we call it. Everything's bee related. Being in Manchester, the Manchester worker bee gets sort of idealized, I suppose, on our intranet. The buzz, everything is bee related. So be efficient as our ideation forum, and then Pulse for the bi-monthly stuff. They probably get the most traction. That's where the most amount of feedback and sort of noise comes from. And then we have other colleagues that help us understand that or activate it in a little bit more detail. So I will read every comment that comes through Pulse and then try and put it into buckets toolkits and themes. The team that look after Be Efficient do something similar. So we ask colleagues to hashtag digital, hashtag IT, hashtag process, product, whatever.
Right.
That helps categorize it when we run the report afterwards. But for polls, we manually put it into themes because they are ever changing. New themes crop up every time, so it needs to be that. Well, I find it easier, and I quite like reading all the comments every month anyway. And then our colleague groups, like our ambassadors or the colleague cooperative forum, as representatives from their areas at various levels of the organisation, then help us make sense of it. So where somebody might have just said, it's really difficult accessing systems, they crash all the time, and it's not specific and tangible enough, we can go back out to that group and say, well, what could they have meant by that? Is there something specific? Is there, and try and sort of coax it out of them in a bit more detail, which is really helpful, and then you can make some change and make lives better, and it makes everybody happy. So yeah.
Amazing. Good. And Suzanne, you mentioned we had a call a little while ago. You mentioned a unique use case and a way of listening. You've been running a webinar, am I right?
Yes, a weekly webinar every Thursday for the past 20 years.
20 years of webinars.
20 years.
You have surpassed my webinar count for sure, 10, 15, 30 times.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, right after COVID, I did lose about half of our normal presenters. So I was struggling with content, because that's a good, probably about 45 weeks. I do take breaks on the holidays. But when I mentioned that we would go monthly, the team, I said, I got a whole lot of hate mail, but it was really love mail. It's
right.
Like, absolutely not. You got to, I look forward to seeing you every Thursday and such. So we have, it's been a great way of being able to combine the loop. That's what our Interact site is called. And these weekly sessions. And so kind of like the Pulse survey, some of the responses that we've gotten, if we've acted on them, or if the functionality is already on our site, we just kind of bring that to fruition. So it's kind of a combination of those things. Being able to have this weekly webinar, share best practices. Our frontline folks are able to build their professional branding, get their names out there. They're able to crowdsource, and usually there's a presentation, but in the chat, I'm sure it's happening right here. A lot of questions going out. They have nothing to do with what we're talking about, which is huge in engagement, and it allows people to kind of grow as subject matter experts and be able to resource for their other colleagues across the country that they otherwise wouldn't know. Another thing that we use for Interact, we use the forums. We do kind of smaller contained communities based on function. And so that way they, again, crowdsourcing, being able to ask questions and have, subject matter experts available to them to be able to just reach out and ask those questions that you don't know who to go to, you don't know where to get. And, where it's just 40 people or 20 people or even 10, depending on the group, they can comfortably go, hey, where would I go for this? Instead of going to the same person all the time, they could just go here and the group just kind of chimes in. So it's nice to see those kind of communities grow. And again, and it's also our kind of our newer functions within our organization. So it helps those particular individuals kind of grow organically with, by making mistakes, learning from others, crowdsourcing instead, along with the traditional blended learning that's out there. So it's been a great resource.
Amazing. To many more webinars, for sure. Good for you guys. So I want to just move into the world of active listening. So we've heard a lot about their strategies, where they came from, how they came to be, and what you're doing to uphold them, and the tools and technologies that it takes to do this. I'm actually going to veer off what is our light, very script here, because Carrie Farrell asked a really great question. I'm actually just going to maximize it. I don't usually do this, but here we go. Carrie asks, if you're a one-person internal comm shop at a 600-person company, what are some basic ways to get started building an employee listening plan? The reason why I'm skipping the script, because I actually think a lot of us have to deal with this. I'm interested in all of you. How many people are on your team? What does it take to run these different listening strategies? Are you alone? Is it what are you doing? How is it happening? Stefan, let's start with you. What was it like?
Yeah, that question really hits home because essentially we were not one, but we were two people, but part-time, part of our job remit. So it's kind of the same concept. This is when we started out pre-launching Workplace. So the objective was to find a solution that would get employees to interact with each other in a two-way format. And then on top of that, with the Spark innovation that came afterwards, we built off of that, all with just myself and one teammate primarily. So it is possible. You can do it. I think first things first is understanding what your niche is and why people should believe in this program. And that goes back to the, testing very small, testing a pilot and seeing what gets you traction. And so that's how we started. We kind of proved the point that people were really engaging in a two-way communications platform as a pilot phase. Then we expanded it out and we went from there. Along the way, as things get more and more popular and successful, you'll suddenly have a lot of friends who will want to pitch in and help out. And that helped us build out our I want to say team. We had a similar structure that somebody else on the panel mentioned, with kind of ambassadors and people on the ground to help out in a voluntary capacity. So it was a way, again, of not kind of formally having a function that was solely dedicated to this, but really grabbing and stealing parts of people's days here and there to kind of join in this movement. And so that was how we got started. I think also, just taking a page from the innovation book, if you want to take yourself and a couple of your besties in a room, do a brainstorm session over a lunch, and see what ways would work for you and your specific company, because every company is going to have a different kind of path to success and how you navigate all of those stakeholders. So just throw some ideas out on a wall and see what happens. See what sticks.
Absolutely. No, this is great. Veronica, what's it like in your role? Are you alone? Do you have some friends helping out?
I have a few friends, let's say. So as I'd already mentioned, we had started a kind of enterprise-wide transformation program. So what that has meant from a business perspective is each function is kind of ready to hear new ideas, because they have the responsibility of ensuring that they are supporting Welling hitting its full potential. But in terms of activating the program, our first challenge, nobody knew what the program was, how it was going to work. So to start with, it did feel a little bit like I was in the room on my own, trying to convince people to come over the hill and join me on the other side. Right. And as you described, as the program starts, the momentum becomes more supportive and more people become part of the team. I think what we have learned is that you don't need to create an employee ideas engagement office. Like, people want to help in general. And so it's just about funneling the people that have that capacity into the program, rather than trying to set up a separate function that is kind of responsible for it. So on a day-to-day basis, there's two of us, and it's not my full-time job. In fact, I'd probably say it's less than 10% of my role. I have a person who's 100% dedicated to the program, and her role is that kind of administrator, managing the responses, making sure people are being told what's going on. And I think you do need someone in that capacity full-time, just to keep on top of the information and the feedback that you're getting, because there's nothing worse than asking for people for feedback and they're not doing anything with it. So for us, that was the most critical part. And obviously the platform, I talk about that because that provides the baseline of our communications to our people. So when an idea hits 10 likes, the platform triggers a nice automated, crafted, slightly semi-personal message that helps that person understand what's going on. And so that essentially spreads our capacity much wider than it would be if you were trying to do everything yourself without the tool.
Of course.
Love that. I also think both of those answers touched on, just because you're a one-person shop doesn't necessarily mean that you're a one person doing this on your own. There are people from across your organizations that this will resonate with and that will want to get involved. Some of our customers have a huge amount of volunteers that jump in at the chance to help employees feel heard. I think that's very pertinent based on the examples that were just shared as well.
For sure. No, I think it's totally possible to lift up an employee listening strategy single-handedly. I think what you do need, champions across the business, people who are supporting it, stakeholders that see the value in it, and it'll flourish from there.
In a lot of ways, putting the strategy in place is the easy bit. It's keeping up with the feedback afterwards that's the hard bit, and I think that's where everybody else really comes into it. So for us, there's 4 in a full-time internal comms team, but obviously as an internal comms team, there's loads of other stuff that we're doing, not just listening strategies and ideation. So I think that putting it in place, getting that exec leadership buy-in, they're going to be engaged in wanting to hear the outputs, wanting to see what people have said, getting them to be involved in the first place is the main thing. And then it's who are the doers, who are the things that are going to make stuff happen, who's going to help you implement the changes, and getting them on board. Because otherwise you'll get it, you'll read it, you'll agree that it's a really good idea, but as internal comms people, we're never going to have all the answers or be able to make all the changes that we want. So you really need the rest of the bank and the rest of the people to then be on hand to support to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to have a little debate as a panel if we can. And Jenny Alton asked this question. It's actually on my screen as well because I'm just curious. Anonymous versus not identified, but non-anonymous feedback. So, I mean, in the world of ideation, in the world of surveys, what's your rule of thumb? Do we want a Greg Stort said, or are we team anonymous? I'd love everyone.
Sorry, so I'll chip in because I'm quite militant about this.
Yeah.
So from an engagement perspective, if we're asking colleagues what they think about their own lives, their own roles, their own work, then 100% it needs to be anonymous. That anonymity is really empowering to allow somebody to say that I'm really not looked after in my team, or I really don't agree with the way this is working, and to know that there's no way that anybody's going to be able to pinpoint that on you is really liberating for people, and you get a much more honest view of it. Clearly, in some scenarios, that only works to some extent. So from an ideas perspective, if somebody's telling us that they want to improve our mobile banking app in a very specific way, but they leave out some key features or key things into their idea, you can't go back to that person and ask them for that more detail. So we're very clear line in that when it comes to ideas and ideation through Be Efficient, your name is assigned to it and you can't post anonymously. But when it comes to the posts and it's about engagement, or the question that they're asked is, what's the one question or piece of feedback you would like to share with the exec team? And in that scenario, they are 100% anonymous. And I even make sure that when we've read through it, we've removed things where people have said they've signed their name, because people do that when they're like, I don't care, I'm going to tell you who I am. Yeah. We'll remove the name, we'll remove things that could identify someone if it filtered through. So like, I've been here 10 years and 6 months and I work in the X team. And make sure that there's no cross filtering that's allowed from department, location, and any intranet group, so that you can't use the three together to try and work out who said what. But yeah, the post is anonymous, ideas aren't.
Yeah. Well, and I'm actually from our friends at Sideways 6, so Stefan and Veronica, do you run campaigns in Sideways 6 as anonymous? Is there a reason for it? Should we be?
So we've had a debate with our program about this, and what we basically landed on was we give you the option of being anonymous, but we bias towards non-anonymous. And that was really because the platform's set up to celebrate people, posting their idea, people upvoting that idea, etc. And also there was a question in the chat and the Q&A about incentivizing ideas. One of the big incentives was actually just personal motivation and professional growth. So if your idea does get selected, then part of the kind of the prize is you get to implement it. You get to be the project lead to then implement your ideas, and we connect you with the right teams to get that actioned, and you get your face in front of leadership. And so obviously we can only do that if we know who you are. And so that's why the whole ideas program was around kind of being named and celebrated, but we definitely did have a path where you could, if you wanted to, submit anonymously.
And similar to us, essentially the same approach as we're using the same platform. We actually lean into having the boosters, which are our ambassadors. They're the names of the people that we use around the business. So if there is somebody who has an idea, but they don't want to be in front of that idea, all the ideas come into the platform. First of all, they're hidden. So we have an opportunity to do a little bit of triage on them just to make sure that they make sense. Obviously for us, we've got multilingual, we have to do some translation. My Spanish isn't great. So there is an opportunity there if someone has written very expressly that they don't want to be contacted and they don't want to be part of the process, that we can divert that off into a different management approach as well.
Fantastic. I'm going to do away with our script. I'm letting everyone on this call just own this panel right now. So I'm just going to move us into another question here from Alexis. Would love to hear more from panelists on their process for communicating idea execution implementation back to employees. Now, I would argue, even on the Pulse side, what do you do with this survey information? Are you communicating it and keeping employees engaged in submitting their feedback and ideas? Are we communicating it back? Is that easy to do? What's it look like for each of you when it comes to communication of the outcomes?
I'll jump in. We definitely communicate when I do the Pulse surveys. If they are, like Veronica, we have had anonymous and we've had non-anonymous. When they're not anonymous, each day we would just think, we've gotten your survey. Thank you very much. And so they know that we know that they submitted something in. When it's not anonymous, what we'll do is on that weekly webinar, we'll make mention of the ones that we received, the ones that we can follow through on, the ones we can't.
Sure.
And again, we do that. I know we do the survey once a month, but probably once a quarter, the ones we haven't acted on, we'll respond and say, hey guys, these are still on the list. Somebody submit, because this year was anonymous. We're still working on them. So just to let you know, we have not forgotten about you. Good. So being noisy that way, and which allows them to, we use our website. We also have a feature where you can submit questions and ideas. And I think it was Laura that was saying, we do not lack feedback. Everybody's very comfortable in sharing their ideas. And I think it's because of the responsiveness. If something's not working or it's like something that's quick, we respond within, 24 hours, and they love knowing that they have that kind of impact. So I think sometimes they're our best QC crew because they'll look for things, and
right.
They'll suggest, when things aren't working as easy as they're kind of gotten used to, they let us know. So it allows us to make it a better resource for them.
Fantastic.
In terms of sharing things back in an ideas campaign setting, we try to do it as much and as often as we can, because obviously that generates engagement on itself. So one example from one of the ideas that we had was there was a true crime podcast that was launched in our German market because a couple of keen employees really wanted to try it out. And suddenly it became one of the top podcasts in the nation. And it was revenue generating within the first year of launch, which is really hard for a podcast. So we shout about that every time we get. It's Mordlauf if anybody is in Germany and wants to give it a listen. But that's one way we feedback. So we kind of celebrate the success stories individually. And then on an aggregated basis, we also communicate both to the entire population and to executive sponsors a more rigorous kind of we do a survey after every innovation campaign to see how people enjoyed it and what people want from future campaigns. We take a tally of all the ideas that were submitted, and we kind of package it up in an executive summary that we then share again back to everybody involved in the program, and then specifically a cut down version for executives.
Incredible. This is a lot, but this is great. Now we ran out of time. How did we do this? There's so much to cover and so much I still want to ask, and there's a lot of wonderful questions still inside of our Q&A panel. So we will find a way to get these answered with this wonderful group. I want to thank every one of you for taking the time and being fully transparent with us today, sharing about your listening strategies, sharing about how you allow employees to shape and change positively within your own organization. I want to personally thank you for all that you do within your own organization. I think it's really cool to know that there's people like you making positive change for the organizations that others work in. I don't think that gets said enough to the people like us who are doing behind the scenes work. So thank you very much for everything that you're doing for your employees, and keep up that great work. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I do apologize for not being able to get us through the entire set of questions that we wanted to get, but we will find a way. Like I said, if you're interested in other webinars just like this, the Sideways 6 team is running a webinar with Marks and Spencer's coming up, and that should be popping up on your screen to register as you'd like. And you can also navigate over to their website to find this upcoming webinar as well. And if you'd like to hear more about the Interact team, you can connect with us via, well, basically anywhere. LinkedIn, our website, interactsoftware.com. You can also just throw your email in this nice little pop-up that happened up on your window there. But also we'll be sending out this recording and a bunch of goodies as well to your inbox as soon as we have the recording available. Thank you on behalf of the Interact team for being here with us today. And I want to thank you, Jake, for being with us from the Sideways 6 team. It was an absolute pleasure doing a co-host webinar with you.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Enjoyed it a lot.
Enjoy the day, everyone, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.